This is Leafs Morning Take with Nick Alberga and Jay Rosehill.
Now we've got a fight started here right off the bat with Rosehill.
30 minutes of live, non-stop Leafs talk starts now.
And happy Canada Day. NHL Free Agency underway here in full effect, but very underwhelming so far. Presented by Botano. Welcome to this free agent special edition of Leafs Morning Take. Probably should just call it Leafs Afternoon Take, Rosie?
First time we've done one of these. It's not too bad. We were a little busy with the free agent frenzy going on this morning, but yeah, let's break it down here. I'm just scrolling through, see Bunting signed. Things have been happening since I last logged off, but yeah, where are we going to go with this one?
Well, I'm going to go on my soapbox first, and bitch about this being the worst fucking day possible, where Elon Musk wants to grab Twitter yet again by the balls and ruin everything. I can't remember a free agent frenzy as bad as the one today, because we had no access pretty much to social media and Twitter. And yeah, we're a part of the feed here with Daily Faceoff and watching the other networks in Canada and the States, but just so disappointing, on a day that is supposed to be sort of a blockbuster for NBA fans and NHL fans. It was ripped away from us, Rosie.
Well, what's the story? Like, what? I don't really. It says you've used up too much of something. Rather, I don't know. Like, what is going on with Twitter? It's just
so. From what I understand, is Elon Musk, I don't know, for some reason decided today was going to be the day to launch this new program they're having. Whereas if you're not paying for the Twitter subscription, the $9 or whatever it is a month, you're only subject to 600 views a day or something like that. If you're subscribed, it's 6,000, something like that. So this is a money-making machine, effectively. Elon Musk saying, hey, if you won't pay to tweet, then we're going to pay you to read tweets. That's pretty much what's going down here.
Interesting enough. Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe it's okay that the Leafs haven't been doing screw all for the most part. We got one big signing here.
Yeah.
With Revo, if you want to call it a big signing. I mean, it's a big name guy, no question about it. Is it going to shake the earth as far as the performance of the team? Not necessarily, but what do you think about that one?
Yeah, so first, I want to alert everybody, first and foremost, subscribe, tap that like button at the Leafs Nation 401. This is our season finale, by the way. We were with you throughout the course of the offseason, have some special interviews. I talked to Ryan Reaves earlier today. We're going to do something with Revo coming up this week, so make sure to keep a lock to our channel, and that's why I encourage y'all at the Leafs Nation 401, where you could subscribe. Search Leafs Morning Take if you just want to find our podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. TheLeafsNation.com doing some fantastic work on this free agency day. And if you have thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns in the chat down below, hit us up with your reaction, your thoughts on the Reeves signing, everything else that's transpired with this team. Please hit us up. And as you referenced, I always have to lead to getting over the board. So let's do that.
That's right. Be the last time we hear that.
I was just going to say that. We've got to figure out this graphic situation, the music and all that. We're going to have a facelift with Leafs Morning Take in the offseason for sure. So you referenced it. The big move so far, and it's important to stress this is happening live. We're here at 3:05 Eastern time. So if you're listening to this and the Leafs have done something significant, our apologies. We'll probably cover that at a later date. But Ryan Reaves, 3 years, 1.35 per season. He is 36. He'll be 39 at the end of this deal. Your thoughts, Rosie?
Yeah, you got to think this is probably the contract that'll take him to the end of his career. I mean, I just think he's done such a phenomenal job staying in the league, where guys with his skill set and background and credentials and everything, have ultimately been phased out of the league entirely. That's like 10 years ago. And he just keeps grinding off contracts and staying on teams and bounced around with different teams who want to use his services. And he finds himself in the Canadian market here in Toronto for the first time. But again, a testament to him being able to stay in the league. It's really impressive. And, now the Maple Leafs have got one of the toughest guys in the league. I promise you there won't be any ragdolling of Mitch Marner's or Austin Matthews or any of that type of sort of thing going on anymore. Does this shake the earth as far as how the team's going to play and perform? Not necessarily, but I hope that given this backbone to the team is, has its tentacles shaped through the whole roster and everyone can play a few inches taller.
I love the quote from today on TSN. I'll just beat someone up and the pressure is off. Easier said than done. I think Ryan Reaves is going to figure out really, really quickly some of the fortitude or lack thereof in that locker room. I hope he walks in there, changes the boombox like Dion Phaneuf.
I remember that. I
Yeah.
think he will. He's a pretty big personality guy, and
Yeah.
I think he'll be, very strong in that locker room, and the culture and the toughness and all that is obviously that's what he brings to the table. He's a tough guy who can go out there and police and patrol, and he can make some hits and go make sure that no one's taking liberties with your team, which is something I think they've needed. I don't think they're done in the aggression standpoint. I would love to have someone in the top six that can muck and grind a little bit. But as far as, addressing the fact that we get pushed around too much, I think you've kind of done that to an extent here today.
Yeah, ultimately, it's not really a big story for me. I know people are complaining. And again, this has been something I've been hitting for the last week. Anything Brad Treliving will do in his tenure as GM will be compared to Kyle Dubas, and you'll have people who like it, people who don't like it. From what I understand, he's been after Ryan Reaves for a long period of time, dating back to his time with Calgary. I think he brings character, pugnacity, jam. But ultimately, it leads me to the question, what will Ryan Reaves do for this team in the Stanley Cup playoffs? If you do recall, yet again, they're unable to score when it matters most. And I just don't think anything that Ryan Reaves brings to the table is going to change that, unfortunately.
Yeah, the playoffs are a different beast for sure. It's just a matter of what is the team feeling going into the playoffs? Where's their confidence level? What is their play like that time of year? And is it any different than it has been the last couple of years? And you got to think that adding a Ryan Reaves could potentially, change the identity of the team, how they play, what their confidence level is. I hope some of his physicality wears off on the other players and they can play a few inches taller, like I said. But I mean, ultimately in the playoffs, is Ryan Reaves going to take you to the promised land? No, he's not on his own, not even close. But, there's an argument to be made that having him there makes others better.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I think classic Toronto, everybody's just making too much of not much. And I understand that's my only concern. He will be 39 when this deal concludes. But again, Ryan Reaves, a now member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. There's a laundry list of departures, which I think is intriguing. The last week or so, we've been talking about some potential names to potentially come back. Luke Schenn, man, got the bag. There was no way the Leafs are paying him that. Music City for both Ryan O'Reilly and Luke Schenn. So O'Reilly signs at 4.5 over 4. Schenner got 2.75 over 3.
Yeah, they sure got paid, didn't they? I mean, I don't think we can give either of those guys that, obviously, or they'd probably be here. But definitely some deletions on our roster here, and we're looking for additions. And so far, Treliving hasn't been able to make that happen, or hasn't been willing to. So we'll see where this roster, rounds out in the next few days, maybe weeks. It'll be hard to say, but obviously not able to pay Schenner, 3 times the money that he was making the last couple of years, and went a different direction with Ryan O'Reilly as well. So, I mean, ultimately good for them. Congrats. But what you got to do is think to yourself, okay, well, the Leafs roster is significantly worse right now than it was when they lost out to the Florida Panthers in the second round. Where do we go from here, and what's it going to look like come training camp?
Rosie, the fascinating thing to me regarding Ryan O'Reilly from, I think it was a Darren Dreger tweet or an insider for sure, saying that Ryan O'Reilly, the term and the money were there for him in Toronto. He chose to leave Toronto, which I think is a bit stunning, especially when he's going to the Nashville Predators. Having said that, a tax-free state, right? So he's getting more with them.
I mean, Nashville's one of the favorite places for guys to play. There's so many positives to being there. Yeah, the tax-free, the money's good. It's cheaper living than it is up here. The weather's better. They got a full barn that's loud, lots of success, and obviously all the history and the country music scene of Nashville. Ryan O'Reilly's very involved in music. He's a musician himself, so it makes total sense why he would go down there. I mean, I don't think that's indicative of his time in Toronto, whether it was negative or positive. I think he probably enjoyed himself, and at the end of the day, it just made more sense for him to go down to Nashville and play there. And I was unaware that they probably offered him the same amount of money, but I don't think it's an insult to the Maple Leafs that he didn't choose to come back there.
I think I need to brush up on my laser eye, man. Justin Holl got 3 years and $3.4 million per season with Detroit. Are we missing something on this guy, honestly? Because again, this is now not just a Leafs thing; it's a league-wide thing. And this is no disrespect to Justin Holl. Good on him. By all accounts, he's phenomenal in the room. But like $3.4 million a season for Justin Holl, who couldn't crack the Maple Leafs roster in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, are we at a point, and I know we're not a wing show, but are we at a point where we're thinking Steve Yzerman isn't the juggernaut executive we all thought he was, man? Because I think that's a reckless signing, quite frankly.
I was thinking it was fake when I saw it. My buddy just texted me while we were on the free agent show, and I was like, I don't know if I should say this on air because it could just be like a laughable thing, but like I saw Hall and $10 million beside his name, and I was just like, I
Good
just
for
don't
his
understand.
agent.
I was wondering if he was going. What's that?
Good for his agent.
Good for his agent, right? Good for him. Like freaking take the bag and run. Like solidified himself big time. I just don't see how. I mean, there's so many defensemen in the minors who are just kind of on the cusp of being good enough to play in the NHL, but the mistakes and the hiccups are too much. And he's like almost one of them. And then he just cracks off a monster contract after, like you say, being kind of like shooed out of Toronto. It's shocking. I don't understand it, but good for him.
The only answer I have is that he's a right-handed shooting defenseman, and they're so hard to find. Like, that's all I can say.
I guess it has to be, but like, who else is out there for that money? And how can you not lock him up for 1.8 or $2 million? Like, how are you not able to get him for that? What were his options? Did he have options and was using leverage? Like, it seems crazy because like, what is he's a big body that doesn't even use it. Right-handed defenseman. Okay. That's valuable, but like, that's it. That just gets you that in the NHL. I'm still lost.
It shows you the market, right? Because Radko Gudas, who is another right-handed shooting defenseman who actually plays heavy, got $4 million per season over 3 with the Anaheim Ducks. So there's your answer.
That's a big ticket right there for sure. Yeah, man. He's he's kind of made himself that wrecking ball. He's got some notoriety around the league. Now he's gone deep in the playoffs, and his run with Tampa was always obviously valuable, and the guy's made a name for himself, and he got the bag here too, and they wanted a guy like him, and they got him. So I guess that affects it a little bit. I still don't see the similarities to Hall, but good on him. And yeah, another big ticket signing there with Gudas too, and he's going to the West Coast.
3 times 3.4 for Justin Holl. And again, the last one as we have this conversation, Michael Bunting signs with the Carolina Hurricanes, 3 at 4.5 per season for him. So effectively he gets as much AAV as Ryan O'Reilly. But again, it's important to factor in tax-free in Tennessee for Ryan O'Reilly. But Michael Bunting with the Carolina Hurricanes, I can't wait for the return. And that's the prototypical type player that they're looking for there. Like, they love having depth. I think the one thing they're lacking in Carolina is like that bona fide superstar. I thought a guy like Mitch Marner makes a lot of sense there. Willie Nylander, but it's quite clear the Leafs are not going to make a blockbuster trade here. Not to be disappointed or anything. I think it's way too early in the offseason to give like a grade on Brad Treliving's first offseason with this team. But Michael Bunting to the Carolina Hurricanes, Rosie.
Yeah, he's going there. I mean, they're making moves there in Carolina. They look pretty darn solid and, like you say, deep, but I think they're lacking, with that big stud superstar. And I don't know if they're going to have room on their cap to do something like that without shaking it up a fair bit. But yeah, I mean, again, with Bunting, I understood his upside. I like his versatility. To be able to move throughout the lineup, play with big boys, play a different role. And he kind of did that this year and accepted it to a certain extent. But I just didn't like how he didn't understand the role, didn't really know how to play the role. Like you want to go out there, be a Corey Perry, who's just constantly, disrupting the other team, drawing penalties, getting on the power play. You get into the game like that with your mojo when you're playing on the edge, and it just translates to having plays being made, scoring goals, putting up points, just being in the mix of everything. And he's trying to do that, but he was doing it with like diving and yelling at the ref and snapping his stick over the boards all the time, which I don't mind by any means, but it's just like that was like his MO on playing that way. And then, the suspension in the playoffs was just like, it's just so hard to watch. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, what's going through your head? And I don't want to be too hard on a guy who's trying to take it an extra step and who's trying to be physical and trying to be in the mix and be a hated player, but he went about it the wrong way and it caused him a lot more harm than good.
Take nothing away from Sheldon Keefe, but I do think it's a really, really good fit, Rod Brindamore, right? Somebody who will rein you in. And if you make a mistake or you do something stupid, you're not going to play, right? There's so much depth in that Carolina roster, and I think that's such an intriguing fit, Michael Bunting going to that team. I'm just so disappointed by the way it went for Michael Bunting in Toronto. 2 short years. The first year, I thought he was fantastic. Like, it was one of the better bargain deals in the NHL. Kyle Dubas knew him, of course, from his time. But like, it's just one of those things that went south in a hurry. And like your best ability is availability. And unfortunately, he towed that line so many times. And I'm with you. Like, I really soured on Michael Bunting midway through this season because of all the diving. Like, you're a really good hockey player, man. You score 20 plus goals. Like, quit that shit. And maybe they'll have a bit more respect for you around the league, and it'll help you out in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But it's amazing to me how quickly it soured for Michael Bunting in Toronto, where it seemed like he was going to be a mainstay on this roster. He's a Scarborough kid. He's a Scarborough kid, wanted to be with this team, and now all of a sudden he's not.
Yeah, it did sour in a hurry, man. He kind of played his way right out of here. His actions there in the playoffs were, a mistake, I think. And again, like, if you want, it's rattling because he was so close to like doing what we needed, but just went about it the wrong way. And I mean, you need to be that guy who just has guys draped over you, hanging off of you, getting holding penalties called on you all the time because you just won't stop moving your feet. You'll battle through it all the time. And I mean, that stuff is called so often in the NHL that all you got to do is just keep battling through. Like, the refs are going to see the hooks and the holds on you when you just keep working, keep moving your feet, drawing those penalties. And instead he'd stop and like just do the most dramatic head snapping things, and then instantly just be looking for the ref and yelling in this profuse manner of, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Just screaming. And then he takes that all the way to the bench and is screaming at the ref the whole TV timeout. And it's just like, geez, man, it's not going to get you anywhere. And I think he learned that the hard way, but nonetheless ends up in Carolina, and he'll go about it again there. And I imagine he'll probably end up having some success there. He's a good player.
And you wonder how that's perceived in the locker room as well, as we took a look at what's next for this team. Like, we knew this coming into this day, Rosie. I don't know about you. I didn't expect much here in free agency. Like, everything is tied up again to the core four, and most specifically, Willie Nylander. Nothing new on that front as we have this conversation. Ditto for Austin Matthews. Of course, there's more optimism on the Matthews front that at some point in time, this contract's going to appear. I hope it's not on Twitter because it might never go out because Twitter's an absolute joke. But nevertheless, we knew this is coming. They're so cap strapped. Like, it's ridiculous. And that's the problem I have is, like, how do you allocate this money somewhere else where you have those four guys making so much money, and effectively you're going to come back with the same team, or at least the same key players?
Well, the same key players for sure. I've kind of moved on and resigned myself to figuring out how we're going to fill out the depth. I mean, you lose, like, it looks like Achari and Kerfoot,
everyone,
and Holl and Schenn and Ryan O'Reilly. And it's like, holy smokes, like, we added a lot of those guys to get us over the hump, and it wasn't good enough to beat Florida in the second round. So it's like, okay, how are we going to mix it up a little bit? But we've pretty much just unloaded everything except for those four big contracts, which you can argue about, are those guys worth all that or not?
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to say, well, so far they haven't really won them anything. So you'd say so far not yet, but it is a what have you done for me lately league. And I understand that these are quality players and it's hard to get out from under those contracts, but they're definitely strapped to those four guys. And I just am resigned to the fact that they're all going to be coming back and they're still going to have this team built around that nucleus. But what is left to fill it out, to at least be able to have hope that it's going to be a better team than last year?
Yeah, that's the hope, right? And the aspirations that you can finally get over that hump. But I think you make a really good point in the fact that they've been stripped of a lot of their depth. And how do you make that up? And I should say that as the day continues on, they're linked to Max Domi. Obviously, that name's been around this market for a long period of time. And Tyler Bertuzzi. I think Bertuzzi's very fascinating because that was the white whale, if you will, for Kyle Dubas. Like, he could never get his hands on Tyler Bertuzzi and was so interested in, and now he goes to Pittsburgh, and now there's a chance that Brad Treliving could sign Tyler Bertuzzi. But that market's going to build up on both Domi and Bertuzzi here.
I would think so. As guys start to go away and teams are thinking about what they really need and times tick, and that very well could happen. I was really hoping, fingers crossed, for Bertuzzi at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Didn't pick him up, went to Boston. I said, oh man, he's going to be there for a while and be a Bruin. But obviously the things didn't work out well at all for the Boston Bruins this year in the playoffs compared to expectations. And he finds himself a free agent. I think he'd be a great addition. I like the Max Domi thought of it. I think that, there's a guy that can, work his bag off, be physical. I mean, someone that can kind of play in that top to middle six where, if anyone wants to mess around with Max Domi, you've seen him KO guys before. He's not scared. He's got some of his dad's DNA in it. And just seeing the name Domi on the back of a Leafs jersey would just be a wicked story and fun to watch. And I'm sure his interviews and everything else would just be, fantastic as he finds himself coming back to Toronto. But obviously, you got to make it happen, Treliving. You got to find somebody that's going to make this team better. And obviously, that hasn't come across his desk yet. And it's kind of, we're just waiting to see what's this guy going to do, because the only thing he's really done is this Ryan Reaves signing.
And you say patience is a virtue, at least I do, when it comes to free agency, and you can get some value contracts if you wait it out. Having said that, a lot of the guys have gone. Like, it wasn't a deep market to begin with. So ultimately, you look at Domi, you look at Bertuzzi. I say they have to land at least one of those guys, right? If you're legit in taking that next step next season. But there's so many moving parts, even from a trade perspective. But I've always been, I don't know how I've been skeptical they're going to make a blockbuster trade, because I mentioned this last week. What are you going to give up? Like Nick Robertson, Matthew Nyes isn't going anywhere. The draft picks, I mean, they don't have much cooking there, and they don't want to trade the big four. So their hands are strapped, man. It's just so fascinating when I think you look at this team and you wonder what direction they're headed. Early on, I will say I've been very underwhelmed. Having said that, very, very early in the offseason, I will be careful in being that cynical of Brad Treliving and his brain trust early on in this process. But I have to say right now, I'm very underwhelmed, Rosie.
Yeah, it's been an underwhelming day in a lot of ways. I agree with you.
Across the league.
I thought we'd have Schenn back for sure.
Yeah, that sucks, man.
But if he's commanding that elsewhere, and I mean his agent's fishing around and he's getting some vibes of that type of money, and the Leafs are just like, sorry, we can't even possibly entertain that, then I understand why it falls through. But I just didn't. I thought they'd be able to come to terms. He'd get a raise and he'd stay. To lose O'Reilly and Acciari was one of those guys with some sandpaper that we may lose here. And what is
do you realize who's at fault for this?
I think you're probably gonna say Mr. Dubas.
Well, my thinking is like, and this is more maybe on the core four and maybe on Matthews, Marner, and to an extent Nylander. I think his contract looks pretty damn sexy now. But like, they've always in the past used that extra money to give it to the big boys. And it's a flawed logic. And again, we'll see if the negotiations are different under Brad Treliving. But that's my thinking. They have no money to pay anybody else, again, because of the mistakes. And again, you can't forecast the pandemic. I think at this point in time, they were expecting the cap to be way up, compared to what it is right now. And they're expecting everything to free up maybe as early as next summer. But it was just a flawed logic, man. Like it really, really is, because it's taking away from the rest of the roster. And as we see teams, even the Vegas Golden Knights, like depth is a big thing. And unfortunately, the Leafs can't untap that depth because of the tied up nature of the core four.
I know. And I mean, if we're sticking with, all you got to do is, all you can do is hope that they stand out and step up in the playoffs. Like, why have they even gotten those contracts? Because they're so talented. Okay, well, that talent has to translate to playoff success, or else you're just not worth it. Not one of them, not 2 or 3, 4 of them. You're going to tie it up in that many guys. They better be scoring you a lot of goals in the playoffs. They better be playoff performers. They better take you deep. That's why you do it, because you have a lot of eggs in those baskets and there's not room for others. And why do they give that extra $1 or $2 here, there to them just to guarantee you get them? I don't know. It's almost like just because it's Toronto, they command like this big monster contract.
But why is it just Toronto, right? And Brian Hayes was making this, this thought, and I thought he's publicly, said it for a while now. Like, and it makes a lot of sense. Why is it always Toronto? Like, why did Toronto give in to these guys? Is my question.
I don't know. They didn't want to lose them. Obviously, if you do, guys of that caliber are going to go elsewhere and maybe within conference and shove it up your ass for years to come. And I mean, that's always the nightmare scenario. It's happened many times in Toronto, but it's just like, you're just so hamstrung. You are handcuffed to these guys. And, I took some heat for thinking that Marner could be expendable, and think about, I guess it might not be the year to do that. You look at the class of people and who's available and who's locked up and who costs what. I guess they just couldn't get something done if they even wanted to justify a trade of one of the big four. But again, you're probably going into a season with the same guys who haven't really got it done. So I'm just hoping that growth, maturity, experience is going to be playing heavily on these guys, and they've figured things out in the last couple of years, and it'll be a different story this year. They get to the playoffs and need to perform. I'm hoping someone really does.
I love the optimism, my man. The Botano wrap-up is presented by Botano.ca. The game starts now, 19 plus. Please play responsibly. As for the final time this season, we look at the chat again. We are going on a summer hiatus starting tomorrow. Gonna have a couple drinks, chill out. Having said that, we will be back periodically throughout the summer with some different content. If news breaks, obviously we're going to have reaction. And as mentioned, we will interview Ryan Reaves coming up in the next couple days and put that out there on our YouTube channel this week. So look out for that and any other signings the Leafs have. I'll try to get my hands on some of these numbers and these emails and get you the content you crave here with respect to the Leafs Nation. But looking at the chat, Koki writes in, Ryan O'Reilly's personalities for small markets. Dude's a low-key guy, plus taxes are better in Tennessee. Dude, you played in the league. How much of an impact does that have when players are making their decisions when you look at these tax-free places?
I think it's as big as it's ever been. You know, you look at Canada and everyone fleeing Calgary, and, it's expensive to live up here. You get taxed out the ass, and the weather's not ideal sometimes. And, I guess in Calgary's situation, they need a new building and guys are just bailing, and you go down and if it can be a 20% difference. And if you're talking the kind of number years that you're talking, and you're talking, I got this window in my youth to make money playing this hockey, this is my career. It's a big deal whether you make $800,000 or $7 million, or if you make $50,000 a year. 20% is a lot. And, it is understandable that a guy like Ryan O'Reilly, who doesn't have any allegiance to the Toronto Maple Leafs, he doesn't owe them anything, right? He tried to make a go of it and was happy to come there and play at the deadline, and away he went. They didn't end up, winning the Stanley Cup, and he's a free agent, and of course he'd want to go to Nashville. The guy's personality is tailor-made for the city in general. He's got familiar faces around the area. You're not getting taxed. He can go play his guitar with all these country music stars. It's a no-brainer why he did it, and I don't think anyone should be mad or surprised that it happened. But I was just in hopes that that option wasn't even available to him, and maybe he'd get something done. But the Schenn one's the one that surprised me the most, and good for him. He's battled and grinded and reinvented himself. He got paid. Good for him. I understand why we can't have any of them right now.
Man, how about Matt Duchene? So he gets bought out by Nashville. He's going to get like $8 million for life from them. And then he signs with Dallas for $3. So like by my math, that's like $11 million tax-free bucks.
Fuck. Well, not tax-free, but no state tax, obviously. But yeah, he's doing well financially, obviously. Fuck. It's funny how some of the numbers are huge and some of them are small. Like Blake Wheeler, what is he making? $800,000 or $1 million bucks maybe? And you look at the guys that are making more than him, it's like, what the hell? This is kind of weird deal. But some guys are betting on themselves and trying to like time it for when the cap goes up. They can hit free agency again, hopefully have a big year, and away they go. But some of the numbers are kind of baffling, man.
Yeah, they are baffling. I think it just shows you what players and what teams think they're legitimate or not, right? And not to say the Leafs aren't legitimate. Certainly, I think they're always a front runner for the Stanley Cup, but can't get over that hump in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and we get that. But every year they're, in President's Trophy contention, 100-plus point season. So I get that. But still, like it feels like they're chasing their own tail right now. And I think we've been pretty steadfast in saying that if it's not trading one of the core four guys, it's going to be the same old story for this team. And that in lies the big time problem. But as I mentioned the other day, maybe it's from above Brad Treliving. Like it could easily be Brendan Shanahan being like, nah, no cigar. You're keeping these four. And at that point, you're pretty strapped with what you're going to do. Patton's Angry Boy writes in a flat Coke so far. I agree with you. Peter S. Schenn is a big loss. Ridiculous. He has not been re-signed. I get it. But again, ultimately, I don't know if the Leafs or most teams prepared him the way that the Nashville Predators paid him. That was pretty handsome. Luke Schenn gets a 3-year deal.
Yeah, you bet. We just don't have the cap space to do it. He's been playing on low amounts of money lately, and he has reinvented himself, and now he commands a higher dollar, and he's played himself out of, the cap restraints of the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's understandable. It makes sense. And I'm not condemning Brad Treliving yet.
Not
anything
yet.
like that. I've given him time. I'm going to wait and see. And he's got moves to make and he's got triggers to pull. I'm sure he will. And, I'm going to reserve judgment and understand that whatever has happened or hasn't happened so far is for a reason. And he's got plans and I hope he pulls them off. And I hope it looks damn good.
Well, I hope they're big ass plans, man, because very underwhelmed so far. But again, just very early on here in free agency. So as mentioned, we're going to go on a bit of a summer hiatus. But again, keep it locked to at the Leafs Nation 401, where you could subscribe on YouTube. And we're going to continue to put some content out there for sure. We're just not doing the live show for a couple months until September, but we're going to get together at least once a week and talk about the latest information, news, notes, signings, trades with this team. So don't feel like we're cheating you and we're not going to bring you the latest. It's just going to be in a different format. But Rosie, it's been a phenomenal first year, man. We really did our thing throughout this season, in my opinion. I could be biased in saying that, but I'm looking forward to the offseason and seeing what this team has up their sleeve here.
Me too, man. It's been a treat. It's been fun. You took me under your wing and got me into the media. I think we got a solid following going on of like-minded Leafs fans. And again, yeah, we're not bailing on anything. Like and subscribe. And when we put content out, it will come across your feed. So looking forward to chipping away for some things at the summertime here and really looking forward to next season getting underway. It's closer than we think.
And lastly, many thanks to Aaron Bordato, a very busy man behind the scenes. You've been fantastic for us. So we'll leave it at that. Saying so long here for the summer as I lose my voice and your son's back on camera. I'm still recovering from Nashville. It was a very, very long week. So that's Jay Rosehill. I'm Nick Alberga. Take care and happy Canada Day.
You're on TV, dude.